Hello, and welcome to Hanratty on Karate. Last week I was in Toronto, Ontario for a seminar hosted by the Toronto JKA and a good friend of mine, Ray Teho. Ray was a national kata champion, a Canadian national kata champion a few years ago, and I'd known him through refereeing and coaching with the Alberta team. So it was a good opportunity to see or have a look at JKA instructors. We had attended the JKA Hombu Dojo last year when we visited affiliate clubs in Tokyo. I took a bunch of my students over to the JKA Hombu. They very graciously allowed us to take a class. Of course, we had to pay, but it was interesting, and it was nice to get back to training that was really, really similar to what we do in our dojo anyway. So I was kind of interested to go and see Naka and get a handle on what the popularity, if you like, was about. I've noticed, as probably many of you have, that he seems to have been on a world tour, and apart from making some martial art movies, he appears to be the new sort of poster boy for the JKA. So I was interested to go and see just exactly what the fuss was about, if you like. And I was very pleasantly surprised. An extremely personable person, quite good-looking lad if you into that. Well, he would be, being in the movies. And for a 60-year-old, and I call him a lad because I'm a lot older than him, but for a 60-year-old, he moves really smoothly. Very smooth, very fluid. Techniques are almost flawless, and a lot of power. And when he opened up the seminar, and there was about 200 people in attendance, I took a couple of my guys, Sean, who's my senior instructor, he's a 6 dan, and Daniel, he's a young guy, Sandan, really strong, really fast and powerful. And I wanted to get their opinions as well. So we took some notes as we went through the seminar. So the first day, Naka-sensei concentrated on basics and basic biomechanics. Now, his biomechanics were excellent, how he explained weight distribution, leverage, developing power through the techniques. Pretty much the way Nishiyama taught his basics, and Nishiyama was one of the best teachers going, so from experience, I know I did many sessions with Nishiyama, both at his club, and brought him up to Calgary in the early 80s and stuck with him right through to the 90s, and attended all his camps in California. So I had a good in-depth knowledge of what the JKA look at for basics, and it works. But it's definitely Japanese karate. There's different kinds of karate. There's what I call sport karate, which is basically WKF. There's the Americanized version of karate, which is garbage. You get these no-touch masters and these people who scream all the way through a kata and stuff like that. That's Americanized karate. And then you get what you call traditional karate, which isn't always traditional because they still have an emphasis on competition. And the kumite and the kata is geared towards competition. So this does a couple of things, especially if you watch the sport karate and they do the team kata and the team kata demonstration. Basically, it's just a demonstration. Often what they're doing in that demonstration, there's no resemblance to the kata they've just performed. And it only works if somebody is willing to throw themselves on the floor or do a backflip. So I was interested to see just exactly what comes of the Japanese karate, what their emphasis was on. And their emphasis, from what I saw, appears to be all on technique, how to develop power from technique. And I would say it's studied and itemized down to the 9th degree, and it's nice to look at. It's quite effective in a non-conflict situation, but it doesn't relate and it doesn't transfer to the kumite. It doesn't relate and it doesn't always transfer to the kata. So how can I explain this? When you watch kumite, you would never know what style a guy was, what style a kumite fighter was. In kumite, it's just like if you closed your eyes and 3 people come up and punch you in the mouth, you couldn't tell which one was Shotokan, which one was Goju, or which one was Okinawan karate. punching him out is punching him out. And it doesn't matter how good your technique is, it's still punching him out. And it all goes out the window when it comes to kumite, particularly if you've been in a street or a real situation where it's non-consensual kumite. That means you didn't really agree to the fight, you just got into a situation where you couldn't get out of it. And you weren't too happy about it, so what you have to do is what you have to do to, get yourself home. So this is a street fight, and it's way different. But I'm not saying that the mental state isn't different, but you have a lot more adrenaline going in a street fight than you do in a kumite match, for example. I've done both, so believe me, I know. The other thing is, a lot of the little applications that you're going to see in kata require fine motor skills. Now, when you're in any kind of a conflict, even if you're in a really heated argument, you're going to get a dose of adrenaline. Now, it may not be a big dose if you're just arguing with somebody, but your voice will get louder. You'll maybe make a little bit more exaggerated movements to get your point across. However, in a kumite situation or in a conflict situation, the adrenaline is going to affect more than just your voice and your exaggerated movements. Adrenaline it's a funny drug. It's slow to come on, but when it does, you tend to OD. Now, when you OD on adrenaline, you get a large dose of it. What it's going to do is it'll pull all of the circulation in to protect the internal organs. Your mouth will go dry because you don't really need your salival glands. And your fine motor skills are going to go off the charts, as well as tunnel vision ensues, which kind of makes you focus on a single point. You don't really get to see your peripheral. So you got to be careful. Now, there's different ways of overcoming it. And some people actually like it. This way you get an adrenaline junkie. So I've done lots of things in my life to bring adrenaline on. I was kind of an adrenaline junkie. I'd done skydiving and rock climbing. In fact, I was in one of the first skydiving clubs ever in England, the Black Knights. So, yeah, I was no stranger to adrenaline. And I knew what adrenaline does in taking away these fine motor skills and stuff like that, and making you single-minded and focused. Your heart rate's going to raise, all this kind of stuff. So when you're doing basics, there's none of that. There's no need for adrenaline. What you're doing is trying to push what you're doing, your technique, into becoming a neural memory. You want your reaction to be a technique rather than just a reaction. Okay, so this is where you overcome the flinch or fight or flight response. If you get somebody jump up and shout at you, and you get a scare, you want to do something about it immediately, and that reaction should be a technique rather than freeze or run away. So that's what you're looking for. Hopefully that's what you're training for, and the basics all form a part of this. So the part that I had a look at, and I looked at intensely on this seminar, was, did it do anything for that particular aspect? And the answer was no. It didn't really address that. There was lots of fine motor skills in some very iffy kata applications that I saw. The techniques themselves were very good, very strong, but often in application were not what was in the kata. So this kind of threw me off a little bit, because I'd done a few seminars years ago with Patrick McCarthy. Now, if you don't know Patrick McCarthy, I would urge you to look him up and have a look at some of his books. He's written extensively on the origins of karate and kata in particular. And his theory is that kata is basically a solo application of two-man drills. And he has all of the terms for it. He's a very learned kind of guy, speaks Japanese and Chinese fluently and writes in both. He kind of opened my eyes a little bit, because he thought a little bit outside the box of traditional Japanese karate. And I think what Japanese karate did, or what they say they did, is they took the Okinawan karate, which was a little offhand, it was people sparring, fighting, using different techniques on each other. And then when the other person didn't show up, they would practice those techniques alone. So the Japanese took what they called Okinawan karate, and they put what they felt was the Budo spirit into it. Now, it may be that they did in the execution of the techniques, but it's not what they did in the application of the techniques and the kata themselves, right? So it's become more of a way, karate do, a way, and I appreciate the fact that Funakoshi wanted it to be that way, and a lot of them feel that they follow that way. But it takes away from the effectiveness of the whole art. Not some of it, because a punch is a punch. As I said, you couldn't tell you what kind of style it was if you got punched by somebody. It doesn't take away from all of it, but it takes away from, I would say, the why that you do it. And of course, everybody's entitled to the why. I just do it because it's good for me. It's great self-defense. I love it as a recreation. It keeps me fit. And there's some people who've done it for life. Like I myself have done it for 55 years now. So yeah, there's that in it. And originally I was JKA. My first major Japanese instructor was Inoda Sensei. And Inoda Sensei's style was entirely different from Naka Sensei's style. But I've noticed this about every JKA instructor I've ever met. They will tell you the exact way to do a technique. They will tell you the exact way to do a kata, but every one of them does it differently. Inoda Sensei's kata is different from Shirai Sensei, Kasei, Oichi, Osaka, and recently Naka. And I noticed small differences in, for example, we did 5 katas over the weekend. I'm not saying we did 5 katas. We performed 5 katas, just went through them move by move with no explanation in it. Although there was a Q&A at the end of the seminar that kind of left me wanting a lot more. But just going through the moves of the kata, and when I ask, oh, is this one Chudan or Jodan? Oh, JKA do this way. Maybe the JKA that he teaches does it that way, but I wouldn't say that Inoda did it that way, because when I was originally taught the kata, we were taught to do it differently. So you kind of wonder, is it just change for change's sake, or do they just want to become like a little group that say, oh, we're JKA, so we do it this way? And I noticed the same thing when we were at the Hombu last year in Japan. When we did Niju Shiho, one of the movements we were told, oh, that's now Gedan. I'm thinking, what do you mean it's now Gedan? How can you change it from what it was to something else? If you're following kata, I always thought that you followed kata the way it was done. You never changed the techniques, you can only change the application. And then if you're going by Patrick McCarthy's theories, or if you like his positions, he says practice the applications or practice the drills first, then look at the kata. And that's what we've been doing for the past 6 or 7 years. When I teach an application. For example, if you just come into my class, first of all, I'll get your biomechanics right. So get you to drop your center of gravity if you can, engage your core, lower your shoulders, feel a little heavy but very relaxed so that you can move. The second thing I'll do, once I've taught you how to make a fist and how your body's going to move, is I'll teach you a block. That's the first thing I teach, a block. Generally a high block, because it's the easiest to explain, although it's not very practical. You don't see it as is in kumite. Then I'll teach you a punch. So once I've taught you a block and a punch, and I'm happy with your progress on both, I will teach you how they relate to each other. What I do then is I bring people in together. So it's not a shock when you meet somebody. The first time 2 people, say 2 white belts, come in and kumite, their distance is all off, because it's socially incorrect to stand right close to somebody. But if you're going to punch them in the mouth, that's the best place to stand, is within striking distance. So we get them closer together, and then we work a little drill, just a punch, block, drill, punch, block, drill. Now, that punch, block, drill can be put easily into a kata, okay? If you block, punch, or punch, block, it's up to you. But if you do Tokyo kata, Tokyoko kata, then first thing you're going to do is block, punch, okay? If you're going to do it against an opponent, then you're going to have some variables like distance, timing, and a psychological edge where you're in somebody else's social space. So That's the way I teach. That wasn't the way JKA teach. They would do hours and hours, or we did hours and hours of just technique without anybody else there. Now, the kumite portion of the course, and we did get around to the kumite portion of the seminar, was basically all reaction drills. A little bit of distancing, but basically reaction drills. And most of it relied upon attack. If you're in a kumite match, generally it's all attack. You learn to attack more than you learn to defend. The defense side of it, I guess, comes a little bit later. So overall, my impression was we pushed through a lot of kata. We did, for example, Teki Sandan, Niju Shiho, Chinte, Goju Shiho Dai. Goju Shiho Dai had a little bit of a problem with because of the changes in the technique. And we also did Sochin, which there was no explanation for any of the techniques. So when I do Sochin, I like to try to explain why you're doing certain things, certain movements. So the Teki Sandan, there's a lot of people that were completely lost on it. The same with the Goju Shiho Dai and also Sochin. So Chinte was a mystery to a lot of people, and it's one of my favorite katas, and I find it one of the easiest katas to show applications for. However, there was differences also in the Chinte that I know and taught, and the Chinte that JKA espouse now. So when it comes to the questions and answers, I think probably that was the thing that blew my mind. Sensei was asked on Niju Shiho what the application was for the hand clap in Niju Shiho. And if you know this kata, you know there's a technique in there where the hands are clapped and then you step back for a block and punch. So the explanation was straight from Volume 9, Best Karate Series by Nakayama, which has always struck me as one of the, for want of a better word, the silliest explanations for a technique I've ever seen. And unfortunately, that was what was presented to us. So without being critical, I suppose I am being critical really, I thought that part of the seminar was not very informative. Now, it's hard to teach a seminar, I know, because I've done it, quite a few of them, especially if you've got 200 people. You can't go around correcting everybody. However, you don't correct nobody. There's some things that you see that maybe the majority of people are doing that you can pull out and have them change it. This wasn't done, so it was, while it was interesting and while it was informative, you probably would have needed to be around Yondan to appreciate what was being offered, and then you would have been also needed to have an inquiring, if not skeptical, turn of mind to analyze what was being shown and what was being offered. All that being said, I did enjoy it. It was really good meeting a lot of friends. It was certainly nice meeting Naka Sensei. As I say, very personable man, moved very, very well for his age, and it was enjoyable. And I'd like to say thank you to Ray Teo for inviting me. But if you get the chance, study Patrick McCarthy's theories on kata, how they developed and how they're used and what they're for. It takes you a little bit outside your comfort zone if you're strict JKA or what you call traditional Shotokan, but it's worthwhile because anything that teaches you something is definitely worthwhile. So anyway, take care, and I'll talk to you again next time.